So welcome everybody. Welcome to a special GSBA Civic Engagement Series Roundtable with our own Senator Maria Cantwell. And happy Pride Month, everyone. I am Linda DeLella Morton, and she, her pronouns. I co-own Terra Plata Restaurant and our new restaurant, La Mania, and I'm also a member of the GSBA Board of Directors. And I'm happy to be here with you all today. And I want to first off thank all 9 GSBA members who are joining us today as panelists to share their stories with the Senator. And of course, thank you to Senator Cantwell for taking the time to meet with us today. I'll introduce all of our panelists and then we'll turn it over to the Senator for some opening remarks. So first off, we have Eli Allison from We Prayer Revolution, Sean Brownlee from Ravenox, Danny Cohn from Cohn & Steiner, and Joe Fougere of Tuta Bella, best pizza in town, Danielle Hutton of Ada's Technical Books and Fuel Coffee, and Nicole Johnson with Sound Therapeutic Acupuncture, Ashley Martinez with Ashley's Pub, and Jordy Neff with Rain City IPA, and Omari Salisbury with Converge Media. And I would like to introduce our very own Senator Maria Cantwell. Senator Cantwell is also chair of the Commerce Committee. She's been chair of the Small Business Committee that's underneath the Commerce Committee. And I just want to thank you, Senator Cantwell, for your leadership, and especially during these extremely challenging times with economic recovery. Like, your committee is probably the most important one in the Senate right now for all of us. So thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Well, thank you, Linda, and thank you so much for inviting me. What a great group of people, panelists, participants to have a chance to communicate with. And I just want to thank everybody for making time today to do that. First of all, thank you for helping to kick off Pride Month. You got to say, Seattle's showing its best self with the beautiful weather we've had for the last few days, and hopefully it will continue with lots of other things that people are doing, even though we're still recovering from the pandemic. Before I get started, Linda, I just wanted to say a special thanks to Louise Chernin for her longstanding leadership at GSBA, both as president and CEO, and really just congratulate her on her retirement. She's just been such an active, stalwart leader, constant focus for what we need to do, and we just really appreciate everything she's done. And I also want to thank everybody who's participating today. First of all, listening to everybody's intro there, the names, it was kind of making me hungry because you have so many small businesses, or also making me think about the issues of media consolidation and fighting against media consolidation, because we need to have diversity of voices. So it was making me think and also get hungry at the same time. So glad to have so many people as part of this presentation and discussion today. So no doubt we've all been through the most challenging year plus of our lives with the COVID pandemic. And in the United States, Congress was really tried to focus on getting dollars out the door that would help small businesses survive during the pandemic. I don't know how many of you participated in the Paycheck Protection Program, but it was specifically targeted at helping small businesses and crafting it in a way that people could take and participate if they were going to help retain their employees and yet get some of the expenses covered as well. So it was a lot to rush out. Now I think we're on our 5th bill of what we've done so far. So it was a lot to get all those things authorized and the program set up. But most recently, we've done 2 programs that we felt long lacked the attention in the program for small businesses. And that was the Shuttered Venue program and a specific program to help the restaurant sector recover from the many challenges that they face. I don't think there's anybody that's been more hard hit than the restaurant sector. And so the fact that we put out a new program at the beginning of this year that immediately the revenue was taken up in a short period of time, I can just tell you, Linda, that we are advocating now for the administration to basically come back with more funds open up the program to those businesses who've already submitted applications and take that tremendous database and resource of people who basically qualified but just didn't get the resources because that's how many businesses needed the help and support. So I hope that we will quickly get that done. It's something we're going to have to build advocacy for. I think as the economy continues to open up and people continue to focus on recovery, I think people will start to forget that there are many people that still have had a tremendous economic shock because of this. And if we want the diversity of these restaurants, if we want these small businesses, we need to continue to support these activities and support the program. I'm happy that during the pandemic with the new administration, we got a couple of things done. We got the first openly gay cabinet member in the United States history with Pete Buttigieg, and we love working with him because obviously we have transportation problems in Seattle, and we will definitely get Pete out here sometime for a larger discussion on how businesses are impacted by our transportation challenges. And we had the first openly federal official, trans openly federal official to be confirmed with Dr. Rachel Levine. So some good news there and some change in policy. But one thing we haven't accomplished that I feel very strongly that we need to take up in the United States Senate is the Equality Act. I say how important this is because as somebody who saw us pass similar legislation in the state of Washington, then went to the United States Senate, and even though we've had legislation introduced in the United States Senate for decades, we haven't passed this important anti-discrimination language. So now that the House of Representatives has done its job, we need to do our job in the United States Senate. I feel like this is similar to the Asian hate crime legislation that wasn't really slated for action, but we said we have got to have action on this. And while we're waiting for some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to wake up and to basically understand how critically important this is, we need to be pushing it and forcing them to vote so that people see and understand that we've waited way too long for the Equality Act. So I am right there with my colleague, Senator Merkley, on this proposal, this latest version of the proposal, and we'll continue to advocate for it and certainly advocate along with Senator Merkley on these other proposals like the talking filibuster to make sure that we are continuing to hold important issues like voting rights, civil rights, and other key reforms that are so critical now in our country to get them passed as well. So I also know that in the last several months, we've had an increased focus on equality in general, and also in what people are seeing as far as wage gaps. One of the things we're trying to do with the Commerce Committee is go back to the fact that the committee was the first committee literally to help with legislation on the 1964 Civil Rights Act by basically saying you didn't have equal accommodations under the law. At the time, they couldn't get the Judiciary Committee to pass legislation, but the Commerce Committee said, how can somebody travel and do business if they can't stay at a hotel? So you're basically discriminating people's accommodations, and we need to do something about it. Now, here we are decades later, and we need to ask ourselves, how much are the civil rights and civil liberties of people that are supposed to be carrying out that act, how well are they being carried out? How well in the transportation sector do we see the diversity that we need to see? How well in other sectors of our economy do we see the diversity and equality that we need to see? And we plan to bring light to this as we start talking about the infrastructure bills and other legislation later this summer. So I know that you have questions for me, but I just want to make sure that we all know that one of the things we'd also like to pass is legislation that my colleague, Senator Cory Booker, is working on as far as police reform and social justice issues. We think this is incredibly important to get done. We think that we have at least 50 votes for this. We just need to get this legislation over the goal line, and I'm hopeful because I've talked to my colleague from New Jersey recently. I know he thinks we're making progress. but we have to do more to realize that these are civil liberty issues that the federal government needs to make sure that everyone's civil liberties are upheld. That's our job. And when we didn't have equal access to education, the federal government stepped in. When Rosa Parks was discriminated against, we stepped in. And when people's voting rights or other rights are being violated, as we have seen with law enforcement, the federal government needs to do its job and enforce these federal civil liberties. So I just thank you for allowing me to be here today. I know there's a lot of issues to cover, but I know you have questions and it's supposed to be a dialogue. So again, thanks for having me here to help kick off Pride Month. And it's so great to see you guys, even though it's virtual, it's still great to see everybody.
Yeah, it's really good to see you as well and to see everybody else. And it seems like this, I say all the time, this last year has been the longest decade of my life. And I really feel like it's been that way. And thank you for addressing what you did address. The Equality Act was one of my bonus questions I was hoping that we had time to get to, but you addressed it already, and it's so important. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I just hope I hope that you're able to do your job with the filibuster being the way it is. So I know that that's another issue that is challenging, that could is something that is a tool that maybe will need some reform or something for all of these things to happen. So I'd like to kick it off by hearing from our small business owners that are our panelists. And I think if we could just get a minute or two from each of you, maybe starting with Ellie and then Sean, about your experience of this past year and the biggest issues facing your business today. Ellie, do you want to kick it off? Eli,
Yeah.
Sorry.
And no worries. I'm Eli. I'm the owner of Repair Revolution. We're an auto repair shop in Seattle. We've been around for 9 years. We turned 10 in December, so pretty big milestone for us. This last year has been incredibly challenging on a lot of levels, and I do appreciate Senator Cantwell, you mentioning recognizing our need to bring diversity into transportation, and that being such a huge part of what we do here. Being a LGBTQ owned and operated automotive repair shop is few and far between. It's definitely a huge issue, and one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today. The biggest challenge facing our business is definitely a shortage of skilled automotive technicians, and I think that is something that you've probably heard about many trades. For every 10 technicians that leave this industry, we're told one replaces them. And when you think about that, and then you think about the number that less than 2% of automotive technicians are women, and that's by design. And I would imagine that LGBTQ folks and BIPOC folks are also among that 2% number. We don't have stats for that, so I don't know. But I think about that being such a critical issue. And when we talk about, President Biden's economic recovery plan and wanting to really focus on infrastructure, I think that one piece that I haven't heard a lot about is we can't have that infrastructure actually happen without a workforce. And, when we leave out women in BIPOC community and LGBT community, because historically we have not been welcome in these industries, we're leaving a huge part of the workforce, or part of potential people that can have careers in this industry out. And so, my ask for you, or my, main point is that I think that we really need to have women, LGBTQ and BIPOC folks centered in the discussion of how do we build this workforce to actually actualize the infrastructure goals of this administration.
Well, thank you. So it's Eli, right?
Yes, it's Eli.
Eli, how many people do you employ right now?
10.
Okay. And so one of the things we would like to do in the infrastructure bill is focus on what we call human infrastructure, to focus on how to build and skill a workforce for today. because we live in this information age, so many things change, and automotive is like a perfect example. It's hard to even keep track with how many changes there are in the automotive field. And now, as we see this international competition, so that means the US providers are also scurrying all the time. We're making a transformation on the energy source because we're going from one type of transportation system to a new type of transportation system. So it's like, oh my gosh, so much change. So how does a small business person, take part in and really help us? Really, I mean that, because you're the ones who are going to do the innovative things that are going to help us be competitive, but you have to be able to get access to part of the supply chain to understand what's going to be happening and to have a skilled workforce. So first of all, we very much believe that we should have an apprentice or a training program be part of the infrastructure bill specifically for transportation. We think we need a lot more transportation workers, and we should be incenting people. A bill that myself and Susan Collins have is a tax credit for people who will hire and train people. So that it's a federally recognized apprentice tax credit, so that you could get, basically we'd be saying to you as an employer, go ahead and hire and train, and we'll take 30 to 40% of those costs out of the equation for you, so that you can be incented to do that training. If you think about it, somebody said to me, who trained people to do semiconductor manufacturing? Nobody did, because no one knew how to do it before we started doing it. Well, that's kind of like a lot of space now. So the other thing that we're trying to do is, in this whole thing of competition, which is what's called the big package, the Endless Frontier Act, is to recognize how our manufacturers and supply chain are facing a lot of competition, is to say that small businesses could also help compete for research and development dollars. So if you had ideas about how, an idea in your automotive area that you thought, could be part of a solution, that you also could get access to research dollars. So we're trying to think of the small business, because we think that's the engine of the US economy. We think that's where the innovation is going to come from. But we also just recognize what a tremendous amount of change is happening. So we have to support you with new tools.
Thank you so much. And one thing that I would just add, I think those are all great ideas. For me to train an apprentice, which I've certainly done, it takes about 2 years before they start paying for themselves. And it's a pretty significant investment as a small business owner. And the other thing that I would just add to that is, I don't think we've often been recognized as being folks in the tech industry. And, the average car has between 7 and 13 computers in it. And so our ability to qualify, there is a lot of workers, outside of our country that would love an opportunity, especially women and LGBTQ folks that don't have an opportunity in their countries to work in the United States. So maybe thinking about adding some of these trades that have become more technical industries than they were in the past to some of the work visas that are for, tech industry would be awesome.
Well, I like that idea. Unfortunately, we're not doing so well on the visa side of the equation.
Yeah.
We've had people cut back on those and want to cut back and say, let's don't do anything until we get immigration reform. I mean, I personally think that's a mistake, but I do like your idea of the trades. What would you call it, do you think? What would you call this specific?
Meaning, what would I call what?
Like, the tech trade for automotive.
Well,
what would you call it?
Automotive technicians used to be called mechanics. We're now called automotive technicians. And part of that is because we are required to, talk to computers and network computers and program computers in order to make cars run. And so that is our title. And I think it's just, people refer to us as mechanics because that's kind of old language, but we are certainly technicians.
Well, you're technicians that have to learn about AI. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
About, all this sea change, again, that we're spending a lot of time talking about nationally, just because we're talking about the competition, and we're talking about, this whole debate about semiconductors, because we had a shortage because of COVID, and some of the automotive industry couldn't get access to it. So then if you can't get access to those new semiconductors, is that going to put us behind in our ability to make the next generation truck or the next generation car. So anyway, it's I will give some thought to the trade point, but I like the technician part. But I also I think that's kind of what we were thinking about in the apprentice was 2 years. I think that's what we thought it would probably take. So I'm going to send you some information, and if you think that it needs to be a larger tax credit because of the 2 years, let me know. I mean, we certainly support having our community colleges just create these programs. They're trying to keep pace too. But the crazy thing is just that the amount of change that's happening on the technology side is just so great. It's like you have to, just keep pace with that. And other countries are spending a lot of money on this now, and we can see that from the competition. I think that's the difference now, is that there's just this competition comes from everywhere. But we know this, if we have small businesses like yours and people like you, then that will help us compete internationally, because you'll help us get this best product and best workforce. So we just need to help on the training side and help on the research side.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eli. And then next up would be Sean.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you to the GSBA as well for the opportunity to share our story today. Thank you, Senator Cantwell, for being here today and for your continued support of small businesses. Your recognition by the National Retail Federation as a hero of Main Street speaks to your support of public policy priorities important to the retail industry. I'm the founder and owner of Ravenox, a Washington-based manufacturer, direct-to-consumer retailer of ropes, cords, and related products. We supply cordage that supports a variety of industries, everything from restaurants, pet stores, horse and tack shops, to the U.S. Navy and offshore wind farms. I'm a U.S. Marine, and I'm also currently serving as the chair for the Washington Retail Association. This has afforded me the opportunity to better understand the impacts our industry is facing throughout the pandemic and subsequent economic crisis. My goal in forming Ravenox was to bring manufacturing back to America and create jobs for Americans. Therefore, the majority of our supply chain is domestic. And over the past year, we've seen a number of challenges related to the pandemic. In the beginning, we saw an uptick in sales as consumers stayed focused on staying home and transitioned to buying our products online. But then fulfillment centers focused on PPE and sidelined our inventory. Fortunately, we were able to produce more products as we were also the manufacturer, but then we faced a labor shortage as our employees got sick or had to stay home and take care of their families. This workforce shortage is one of the biggest challenges we're still facing as a company, and this is industry-wide. While we continue to navigate continuity of sales and labor force deficit, we're very concerned about the cost of rising inflation. Gas prices and shipping and supply chain shortages will likely be felt by retailers and then consumers. And since January, we've seen a 25% increase in the cost of raw materials that we use to produce our ropes, a 40% increase in cost related to shipping. And now we're concerned about the delivery of our products as we're seeing a shortage of shipping pallets, which relates to a 124% increase in lumber prices. This will impact all industries. The cost of inflation and more directly last mile delivery cost is something that can make or break retail. Again, thank you again for the opportunity to share our story today, and I look forward to assisting in any way I can.
Thank you, Sean. What's the 25% rope cost due to, you think, increase?
Raw materials. So we make ropes, and ropes are made with yarn. In the US, our largest or best-selling rope is cotton rope, and we've seen our costs jump up 25% just since January, and there's no end in sight for that. They just continue to go up.
And the 40% on the shipping side?
That's related to everything from increased shipping costs from USPS, UPS, to anything inbound related to freight that's coming in from overseas on shipping containers. Typically, larger retailers are able to lock in for an entire year what their shipping costs are going to be. We've seen that already jump up since January, and that's not even related to tariffs.
What can we do about that last point?
Tariffs or?
No, sorry. Yeah, there's a lot to do there for sure, but having small businesses be treated similar to large, it's almost like you need a most favored nation clause that basically says if you offer this, this term, for any business, you have to give us the same terms, right? So you're basically saying if you're a large manufacturer, they can lock in their rates on shipping, but you can't.
That's correct. Yeah, larger retailers in general have, more buying power, economies of scale, whereas smaller retailers don't. Whether, we try to produce as much domestically as possible, but the supply chain simply doesn't exist in the United States for certain products. So, and they must be imported. As an example for us is, while we produce rope, we make dog leashes and pet products. The hardware associated with that has to be imported. And so whether we're importing, every month or once a year related to a direct product, that's something that when we're sharing a shipping container or we purchase a shipping container ourselves, those costs have just gone up exponentially, whether it's anything related to the Suez incident or, what's happening with, entire ships burning or spillage, anything else related to that. It's just the costs are going up exponentially. And some of that's related to fuel prices as well.
Yeah. Well, definitely feel like you should get the same. If you're buying container space for a whole year, and you should be able to get the same locked in price, in my opinion, as a larger entity could. But no doubt our impacts from COVID on the shipping sector has been tremendous. And you're also mentioning regional instability. And another issue is just the fact that we've had, the global economy is growing. The global economy is growing, and the demands on this infrastructure are growing too. So, but again, we want people to be able to get their products, and we like the ingenuity. I call it American know-how. So it sounds like you're a great example of that by building this company and servicing the clients and customers that you have. So yes, definitely we'll be focused on trying to lower transportation costs and see what we can do. But also going to look at this small business issue as it relates to being able to lock in a set price, because it seems to me like that would be something that we would, that you would want to have happen for small businesses. So you're in Mount Vernon?
That's correct.
Yeah. Great. Well, I like the stuff on the wall there.
I appreciate it.
I was going to wait my turn, but I can't help myself to weigh in on this one topic, because Sean has done such a great job himself, I think, in procurement, but there's things that are out of his control, as he talked about. I think there's two things that could help. One is he doesn't have a director, he doesn't have a buyer, a purchasing agent. I'm guessing, Sean, that you don't have a director of purchasing. It's you.
That's correct.
Okay. A. B. I don't believe that there's any kind of co-op that you belong to that you may be able to tie into, where you guys could then buy the way that a larger, maybe single retailer would buy. So if there's something that the government could do to help set up these kinds of co-ops and encourage them, or provide some of that buying expertise and assistance. It's not like you can't do it. It's just you don't have the time to. It's a full-time job being a buyer and negotiating contracts and that type of thing. So I just wanted to add that before I forgot.
Okay, great. I like that idea.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, definitely. Nicole Johnson.
Hi there. My name is Nicole Johnson, and I'm an acupuncturist here on Capitol Hill in Seattle. I finished school in 2019, and when I first started working, I split my time. I worked part-time at a clinic and part-time building my own practice. And in 2017, I was able to transition full-time into being self-employed and running this business. Each year kind of was better than the last, until obviously last year was a disaster. I did get some PPP loans, and thanks to the GSBA, some grants as well. So those things helped me hold on to my current office to pay the lease through the pandemic. So I'm really grateful to the folks at the GSBA for that insight. The major issue, as I sort of reflect back on the last 10 years and look forward to 10 years and beyond, the thing that weighs on me the most is student loans and student loan interest. Many of us are paying 6 to 7% interest rate. I did an income-based repayment, and I did pay less for the first 6 or so years as I was building the business, which I believe is the point of the program. I've been paying the full amount for several years now, and I still owe more than what I took out because of the interest that has accrued over time. And I am happy to pay back what I owe and what I took out. But the idea that the government is making an almost 7% return on the backs of students who could subsequently become small business owners, it feels not just morally questionable, but also economically unsound to hamstring small business owners with this, what is essentially excess debt. Personally, it prevents me from hiring any extra employees, for paying for an outside billing company, to pay more for advertising, essentially from putting those funds back into circulation, into growing a healthy economy. And I've heard a lot of talk about student loan forgiveness. I haven't heard much about this issue of the high interest rate that's being charged. I hope I'm wrong. It seems a little less likely that the debt itself will be forgiven. Hope I'm wrong about that. But it seems maybe more even politically palatable to say, you know, we can't wipe out this certain amount of debt, but we're at least not going to profit off of your backs. Are you aware of any current movements to eliminate student loan interest? And more pointedly, what can you do to either eliminate student loan interest or reduce substantially this really high rate? And can it be done retroactively in the name of helping to stimulate the economy? Because it will.
Well, first of all, we live in an information age where everybody's going to have to continue to upgrade their skills. So making education more expensive is not a good idea. We need to drive down the cost of education. And one of the easiest ways to drive down the cost of education is drive down the cost of borrowing money. So that's something Elizabeth Warren, my colleague from Massachusetts, has been a leader in. We've tried to take away these programs that have been private sector, for-profit financing, and put the government in a more low interest student loan rate. There have been ideas about forgiving the student loan debt, and ideas about continuing to lower those interest rates for the future. There's also been certain sectors in healthcare. I should think about this and see whether acupuncture actually is covered or not. But in the healthcare sector, we've offered tax credits for people who practice, because when we have a shortage and we don't have people practicing because of the high cost of education, it creates a disincentive for us getting the healthcare system that we need. So those healthcare tax credits basically helped reduce the actual principal of those education loans. So let me find out whether acupuncture actually qualifies for any of those. But yes, we need to lower the interest rate. And yes, we need to consider some of these actions as a way to help. So you're bringing up a point about, we've thought about this from the perspective of the healthcare or other areas where we've seen a shortage. We should be thinking about it from a small business perspective too, because small businesses just took all of this brunt. As we just know, small businesses are 75% of the employment in the economy, and they just took it on the chin. So your idea about what else could we do is well made. So let me come back to you on whether Warren's bill or some of these other healthcare tax credits could be spread to acupuncture.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Danielle, if you would like to go next.
Sure. Hi, Senator Cantwell. I'm Danielle Holton. I just want to thank you so much for being here and listening to what's important to us at this time. Great. As Linda said, I own Ada's Technical Books and Cafe in Capitol Hill here in Seattle. And then I also recently acquired Fuel Coffee. Ada's just celebrated our 11th anniversary. And I just celebrated my first anniversary as owner of Fuel. So I'm doing it a little while. One of my primary goals in running my companies and what I set out to do is that folks that work with me should be able to do what they love for a career and be able to support themselves in a work-life balance while doing so. And the type of people that work with me are baristas, booksellers. I want to thank a lot of the points that were made around retail and equality in the workforce. I think that those are really important. And I think this is another aspect of equality that's important to me. So yeah, it's important to me that my staff make living wages, have access to affordable housing that's close to work in urban centers, have the ability to travel for fun and take vacations, and that they're able to raise a family should they choose to do so. And on that point, starting in 2014, before Washington State Family Leave was passed, I personally at ADA started offering 8 weeks of paid leave to any employee that was full-time in the event of birth or adoption of a child. And I did this because it was important to me to support my staff in this way, not necessarily because it was like super sound financial planning. And I've had several employees take advantage of that leave that I provided. And now with the state policy, we rely on that because, like I said, it's a small business. I can't really afford to provide it. So I have folks that have taken advantage of the state policy as well. And my biggest issue looking 10 years back and 10 years into the future on this point is that the majority of my employees that have taken advantage of this leave have not been able to stay with my company long term. And that is almost exclusively related to access to childcare. That we need affordable, accessible childcare for children of all ages. And I feel like the COVID-19 pandemic has really made that super duper clear and aggravated it multifold. So currently for anyone with a child under the age of 3, it's practically impossible to find affordable and available childcare. I know we have a lot of state programs for 3 and older, but I would love to know your thoughts on how we can accelerate affordable all ages childcare and nationwide. I mean, I think it's an important issue for everybody, and that would definitely help me be able to retain my workforce and keep people working these jobs.
Wow, thank you, Nicole. There's so many things. First of all, I'm like, how could you be in business for 11 years? You don't look that old. But okay.
Those half Italian genes, I don't know.
First of all, how is it that, I mean, just thank you for doing what you did for paid family leave, because that's so important. I definitely support paid family leave at the federal level. Our state did the right thing. We should be doing the right thing at the federal level. I think there's ways to get it done. I hope that we will get it done. But it's so disheartening to hear a small business owner like yourself who has to juggle the workforce of your employees, juggle opening up new businesses, then doing the right thing from a social policy perspective, and then still losing the employee later.
Yes.
Is the whole reason why you were doing it was to distinguish yourself. Mm-hmm. And so we have to, further incent childcare so that we can have access to childcare, particularly for those young ages. Yes, there's some basic programs that we've talked about doing for the Head Start program, but in addition to those who may not qualify for Head Start, we have to, I think, create programs that are going to community-based childcare near the workplace that people can easily access. And yes. So that I would support federal programs and dollars going to that. So the pandemic showed just on so many fronts how bad this is, even on research and development. We had a bunch of professors who were women who didn't get their work done because you can't be a caregiver and a researcher at the same time. So people were greatly impacted all throughout the economy on the lack of access to childcare. What were you going to do? You didn't have any. So people were staying home. What were you going to do? So it greatly impacted. It should be something that impacted the whole household, but clearly it impacted women more than it did men. And we have to correct this because we want to have women in the workforce. We want them to have the opportunities. So creating more federal support for childcare.
Yeah,
so individual tax credits and incentives.
And I guess kind of to prove my point, even in the state, we have 8 to 12 weeks of paid care. I would love for that to be on a federal level, but then after 12 weeks of paid leave, sorry, not care, 12 weeks of paid leave. But after 12 weeks, it's like parents are left in a lurch. And personally, I'm one of those women. I've been working 3 to 5 hours a day for the last year and a half to also care for my child. And there's a lot of people that are so that I'm working in my business 3 to 5 hours a day, caring for my child the other times. And I have several employees that are bringing their children to work that are working less than they would like to. It is a big issue right now. So yeah, the faster we can solve it, the better, I guess. It's just not an issue in this moment in time. It's aggravated right now, but it is an issue beyond right now.
Yes, I agree. And
Awesome.
definitely support the feds doing more robust programming to help drive down the cost. I mean, there's a lot of great examples of what people have done in various regions, and sometimes it gets into areas where people might not agree, but in Southwest Washington, they did a great program that was very focused on, they had a lot of people in the tech sector. They weren't fine. They couldn't, it was, spread out in a more rural setting. So they basically went to the school districts, and the school districts had extra facilities.
Yeah.
So they had extra room. So they set up, for either pre-class and after school and all day for the very young ones, and basically worked with the school district to establish more capacity. Being run by somebody else, not necessarily the school district, but just use the school district capacity because it was right there and they had it. So I think we just have to be more innovative on how we can get this into our communities and drive down the cost.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
I think Omari has to roll on the show in a little bit. So I'm going to have Omari go next.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Definitely want to say, first of all, thank you to the GSBA for having me here today, and for Senator Cantwell, representing a few communities here, a small business owner in Converge Media, and also member of the Black community here in Seattle. And so wanted to kind of talk around those two lines. First, on a community sense, we saw here with COVID what people have known all along. I'm sure you know as well, Senator Cantwell, that, when America sneezes, the Black community catches a cold. And we saw that across all the disparities around COVID, from people who, as far as the disparities in deaths, the disparities in the number of business owners of the, businesses that went under. And as far as, there's so many Black women that lost businesses. Just in totality, COVID, shown bare to the world a lot of the disparities that are out there. And we also saw that here in this city as well. Converge Media, small business here. It was two challenges. One, either we just got denied for everything, like a lot of people did, or the barrier to entry was just, it was too overwhelming. And believe it or not, after 1 year, the only grant that we actually got approved on for anything was GSBA. And some of that is as a small business owner, and you're putting in sometimes 19, 20 hours a day, man, that you get to a grant, or even a loan application, and it's 40, 50 pages. What are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? All you can do is get back on the grind. So I really had two things here, kind of roll it into one is I just really feel that it's important to see where your mind is at in the fact that we always talk about these disparities all the time in America. And like I said, COVID has shown it. And I think that especially business owners, like all business owners, irregardless of orientation or race, they don't want the government to put them in business. They don't want the government to keep them in business. We just want things to be fair. No one's looking for a handout, just a hand up into a fair operating environment. That's just the one thought I was throwing out there. And the other thing is how can we work on reducing barriers to entry? When the government is in a position to be supportive, to make sure that, government kind of gets out of its own way and makes things accessible, especially to small business owners.
Well, Omari, you brought up something really important and near and dear to my heart, which is also the fact that we have to have diversity of voices. And one thing that COVID showed us is that we basically had a media sector that was becoming more and more and more concentrated. And yet when COVID happened, we really needed people who could get out there and deliver the message to particular communities who were going to listen to them. Because I'm pretty sure some of the people you're talking to didn't necessarily turn on Fox News and say, oh, give me the latest about what's happening in Seattle on COVID. So we need to have diversity of voices like you in the communities. So one of the things we were successful in getting was a grant program to help small businesses who were in the media sector qualify for funds. And so we should just, again, see whether there's something that you can do in that particular grant program to see if you can qualify. We are seeing huge transformations in the media sector. And like you're saying, well, how can you get going? How can you get started? Or how can you grow a business when there's so much, competition online that really, in some cases, I think is unfair competition. And it really does affect the broadcasters or people in the media business and puts them in an unfair position. So one thing we're fighting for is to take the COVID programs that were specifically targeted at diverse media and continue that for a longer term period of time. I get exactly what you're saying. You're not asking for the government support. You just want a level playing field. You just want to be able to go out there and have an impact delivering your message and growing your sector. I'm saying something different. I'm saying, I know this, our government can't work and we can't have trust in our system if we don't have the media and diversity of media where people feel like they can get accurate and fair information. So how do you achieve that? You have to have a lot of local content. You have to have people that they trust, that they can listen to and they're hearing from. And when it came to COVID, you had to have people who were going to tell them what was happening in their community. So I appreciate all the small businesses that are part of the discussion today, but I really appreciate yours because this is a general erosion that's happening and it's affecting our democracy. So we have to have trusted media sources. We have to have people that are out there in the community earning that trust. So we're going to have to break down some of these barriers that are creating unfair competition for the online media sector that is controlling so much of the advertising revenue and advertising content. But the legal battle is going to take us a few years. So in the meantime, we want you to have the COVID support. We want you to have the media diversity support so that you can continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. As I say, I'll yield my time.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice transition, Amari. Jenny, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Danny Cohn. I'm the owner of Cohn and Steiner, a local specialty market convenience store. And thank you so much, Senator Cantwell, for being here. This has been such an amazing discussion, and thank you, of course, to the GSBA for putting this together. I've been so, I don't even know what to add to this conversation because I feel like all of these points that I've heard, I'm just sitting here taking notes and thinking, yes, 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 exactly. Like all of these pieces, our business kind of crosses or checks multiple boxes across food and beverage industry, retail industry, brick and mortar retail, and those things. And then within that, like as Sean was talking about supply chain and supply chain interruptions and issues, costs going up, I'm thinking, yes, I mean, we've all seen that certainly in food, beverage, and retail as well. And I think about one of the most important parts to me of our business is the fact that since we don't make anything here, we just sell people's goods, food and beverage. But one of my favorite parts is that we get to showcase so many small local makers and vendors. And a lot of times we're the first place that they ever are able to get shelf space. They're too small to get into Whole Foods yet or something like that. But we can give them their first yes. And yet I see the impact not just on our business in all of the ways that have been mentioned, supply chain, workforce, all the things, but I also see the impact on our vendors, these people that we want to support. We want to spend our dollars buying their goods that we can introduce to our customers. And yet, you know, it's just such a domino effect then but they can't access the supplies either in order to make the product to sell it to us. And so it's just all up and down. And I think the grants and the programs that have been made available thus far have been incredible and truly have the potential to be enormous game changers for sure. And at the same time, you know, I think about, okay, but what are there programs like that, as Omari was just saying, for media? Are there programs for retail? Are there programs, you know, more focused on trade and supply side? And just trying to think of not just what could help for now, but help us weather the continued storm of an unknown re-ramp period. So I don't have a specific question in there, but that's just my really jumbled 2 cents. Thank you.
And I know we're running a little bit short on time. So what I think maybe what we could do is have really quickly Jordy and Ashley do a minute or two of their stories really quickly, and then have a conversation. Maybe we could wrap it up with a restaurant conversation, maybe with Joe and I.
Well, Dan, I just want Danny to know, like, I love this model. I think it's the best thing, you know, when a store, you know, basically works with the region, you know, says who wants to be on my shelf. And because now you're empowering lots of other small businesses.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Really, it's really a great model, and you can't even imagine the product you're going to get, because you're like, hey, so-and-so in Fremont can do this. So-and-so, I mean, you don't even know. I mean, now you're taking people at home and empowering them. And believe me, they come up with some great products. So anyway, supply chain is definitely the focus of the world right now. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll go next, Ashley. Okay. My name's Jordy Neth. Thank you, Maria Cantwell, for your representing us for 20 plus years. Your first election was the first one I got to vote in. And I voted for you ever since then. So I run a CPA firm. We've been in business for 10 years. We grow roughly 25% each and every year. I have a very unique perspective because I see everyone's finances, all of my clients. There's three main topics I wanted to bring up with you. First is the funding of the IRS. I know that would be a fun thing to try to get elected on, increasing the funding, but all of us pay taxes, and the IRS's staffing level is the lowest it's been in almost 30 years. If you've ever tried to call the IRS, they never answer their phones. And I do appreciate that you're talking about tax credits and things like that to try to spur certain areas of the economy. But if people can't call the IRS to figure out how to deploy these things, whether it's PPP loan forgiveness, how grants are getting taxed, the employee retention credit, anything on that front, it makes it very hard for employers to receive the benefits that are trying to go through, that are being enacted. I know it's already been touched on, the education funding. I know we in our industry, CPAs, accountants, are also seeing a very profound lack of people going into our industry. One of the reasons is we in our industry, to sit for the CPA exam, have to have 5 years of education. And people are, to do that, I'm getting applications from people that have $80,000 to $100,000 in student loan debt, if not more. And that is a very large barrier for people to be able to go into more knowledge-based professions, whether it's an auto technician or a CPA or an attorney. I do appreciate everything you're doing on that front, trying to figure out a way that we can make it a more level playing field and not such a barrier to entry. This is going to seem weird coming from a white gay male, but the Equality Rights Amendment, I am concerned what's trying to happen, and I bring this up as an example. Only 38 states have ratified it. It seems like the extensions, making sure that everyone has a level playing field. And that would also help IC promote transgender rights and everything. So I did want to bring that up because half of my staff are females and they all brought it up with me and hoping that I would bring it up with you. So
The Equality Act or
the ERA from it was
ERA, yeah.
Yeah, passed on March 22nd, 1972.
Yes, ERA, yes. Yeah, pretty sad, right? Yeah, pretty sad.
It is very sad. And it always makes me question, are we going to keep moving forward when we can't even get this one item done from what, 40, 50 years ago? So I just wanted to bring that up, keep pushing that forward, and hopefully it'll eventually come to fruition.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and definitely, you know, Janet Yellen's doing a pretty good job. And when she came to her interview, she said, here's what we need to focus on in Treasury. We need to focus on childcare, job training, and affordable housing. So I was like, well, this is a great Main Street view of Treasury instead of the Wall Street view of Treasury. So I think we should keep pushing and taking her up on that. And I do think that we constantly have to fight the IRS getting too complex. And yeah, they need to answer the phone. We got to be able to communicate.
I guess my perspective, one last thing on that front is it's not like the tax code is getting simpler at this point, but the staffing keeps going down.
Yeah.
And that is not helping anyone.
Yeah.
Because all of us have to pay our fair share.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. Ashley, real quick.
Yeah, hi, thank you GSBA for inviting me. Thank you, Senator Cantwell, for your time. My name is Ashley Martinez. I am the owner of Ashley's Pub in downtown Bremerton. It's just a little board game, beer and wine pub. We've been open for 4 years now. Last year definitely sucked, but thanks to the community, we did a GoFundMe that helped. We did a Patreon that's still helping. I've got a downtown Bremerton business grant. I got the GSBA grant. I won't lie, I didn't trust the PPP loans at first. It was kind of a, do I trust the government? But as more people got it, I did apply for the second round of PPP loans and I got that. But most importantly, and one of the reasons I really wanted to say thank you is for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That helped immensely. That made me feel comfortable with where my business is. And the fact that they let women, minorities, and veterans apply first, I think really, really made the difference. So I just wanted to say thank you if you had any part in that, or if you could thank the people that had parts in that. So.
Well, thank you. No, I think what happened is when we were doing all the program over the last year, we got to this point and we said, there are people, look, you can't get access to these programs just because you have a banker who, basically banks in a, 30, 40 story building. You need to have people who don't have a banker on speed dial and yet they can get access to the program. So then we tried to reset the priorities and say, look, get these people in the door. So anyway, glad to hear that it worked. And yeah, it sounds like I need to come over and, see your facility next time I'm in Bremerton.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a quick question on that note. Is there, what are the chances, like how do you feel about getting that funded again?
Capitalized. Well, we just talked to the SBA about it. I know, my colleagues definitely believe it should be recapitalized. I think we just have to keep pushing what, the number of people that were unserved. Look, people, they're going home and they're seeing restaurants that are closed as the economy starts to open up, right? Some people don't really know what's transpired. So now the economy starts to open up and people are going to their favorite neighborhood place or trying to find their favorite neighborhood place. They're finding it's not there. And so I think people are going to be supportive of recapitalizing.
That would be excellent. I'm not going to go too much into our issues because I know we're running short on time, but we definitely had some issues. Terra Plata, of course, got PPP. which was much needed. The first round wasn't enough. We got the second round. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, even though we lost a lot in this past year. But we were just opening our new restaurant in Columbia City, right across the street from Joe's place. And we had all of our personal capital was tied up in this project. There were some stumbling blocks, and we didn't get open. The week of that the governor shut restaurants down, we were having our pre-opening friends and family party. So because we were new and we had no payroll, we had employees that we had just hired that actually had issues getting unemployment because they had quit their previous jobs, and we didn't get any PPP. We actually didn't get anything at all. And we needed it a lot more than most existing restaurants. I can't speak for all the other restaurants in the country, of course, but it's just this random arbitrary gap that we fell into and got zero support. And our lives were literally in this really vulnerable place. On top of it, this organization that helped Joe buy his building, helped us buy the building that we were in with literally 100% debt, Rainier Valley Community Development Fund, who does just that, helps small businesses buy the building that they're in. And so what's happened with that is we became our own landlord who couldn't negotiate with ourselves because we didn't have it. One of our tenants moved out, and so we didn't have their rent to put towards the mortgage. And while they were able to do deferment on our loan, it wasn't forgiveness. And so we've just accrued a spiral of debt since the pandemic hit. And we're trying to get open. You don't have to answer all these questions right now because I don't think we have a lot of time, but maybe we can circle back at some point.
Yeah, would very much.
There's help as a landlord, as a small landlord, help as a small business, not getting any funding of any kind, including the last state grant. It required $25,000 in revenue, which of course we didn't have, even though we filed a tax return since 2019 and had all of our capital invested. So kind of random and arbitrary.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say that when you create these broad programs and you think that you captured, like, here's the specifications for applying, there's always problems. I mean, we have a bunch of, tribes because just the way they, I forget what it is exactly, what kind of thing you needed for your employee. Like, they didn't even qualify. So they got discriminated against, a lot of these, various restaurant and pub facilities that they run. So we've had fishermen who also got discriminated against because they didn't meet the right standard. So happy to follow up with you.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Senator. And thank you to all of our panelists and small business owners. You guys inspire me all the time. And thank you for your time, Senator. We really, really appreciate it. And enjoy the sunshine, everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. Great to hear from you. We'll be following up. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for keeping things going. Thank you for leading the charge on so many important ideas for the workforce and for your business.